All right. Well, welcome everybody to the July 2023. We got some background noise in. Okay. You good? Okay. Well, welcome to the July genre, which is going to be humorous and laughing stories. As you all know, Shags has done such a great job as our CFO. We elevated him tonight to CTO. So he's our tech guy. Pretty soon he'll be our CEO. So he's on the way up. He's an upperly mobile guy. And he looks like the guy from Monopoly right now. Okay. Well, welcome everybody. We got a great show for you tonight. We have 7 storytellers lined up. We're still waiting for our 7th storyteller to join, but we will get started anyway. Back in February, I emceed the Valentines or the love stories for February. And in that session, I started it off by spending about 8 minutes talking about 9 different Greek words for love, because the English language just has that one word, love. So after each storyteller told their story, we went to the audience and we tried to identify which types of love did the storyteller bring up in the story. We had things like agape, which is spiritual love. We had philos, which is familial love. We had things like eros, which is erotic love. And we had things like pragma, which is long-lasting love. So tonight, I thought I would start by giving some elements of humor, so we can also have kind of a little bit of an educational session as we go along, hearing our storytellers tonight regale us with their humorous stories. So some of the elements, I'll give a handout at the end of tonight's presentation. I'll put it in the chat, but I'm not going to give it out now because I don't want people reading the handout instead of listening to our wonderful storytellers. So I put together what I call probably the 25 most common elements of humor, things like puns and twists, irony, miscommunication, mathematical incongruities, absurdity, things like that. So like, for example, a pun. When I was growing up, I knew this guy named Johnny Hook. He ran the bait and tackle shop on the pier. And one day I went up to him, I said, "Is that your real name?" So there's our little pun. Another one is, no matter how fast the U.S. Post Office delivers my envelope, it's still stationary to me. So plays on words can be funny. Twist, that's when the storyteller takes us in one direction. Sometimes a well-known story will go, "Oh, we've heard this before," and all of a sudden at the very end goes off in a different direction, and that makes it really funny that way. So that's the twist. Irony, I find situations I see in real life to be pretty funny. So I used to take the bus in downtown Seattle, and it was underneath the city. And people would just, by etiquette, just start lining up. But every once in a while, there'd be a guy that would come, and he would just come to the front of the line. So when the bus doors open, you go in. Well, this particular day, all the buses were backing up, and the bus ended up parking at the back of the line. And what's tradition is we just turn around the line and people go in. So that was ironic. The rude guy trying to get in first ended up getting in last. So those type of things can be found to be quite funny. And then my favorite is mathematical incongruities. When I was growing up, I'm sure many of you remember, we used to have the door-to-door salesman. The 2 most famous objects that they would sell was the encyclopedia set or the vacuum cleaner. And one day, there's a knock on the door. My mother opens it up, and there's a vacuum cleaner salesman there. And he says, "Ma'am, this new-fangled vacuum cleaner is going to cut your job in half." And without missing a beat, my mother says, "I'll take 2." So those are some of the things we'll be looking for. Paradox, this statement is false. Can't really even be a real statement, because in order for it to be false, it has to be true first. Or if a man tries to commit suicide but fails, did he succeed or did he fail? Who knows? And then my favorite is 2 elderly gentlemen on a golf course on a Wednesday morning. That's a paradox. Okay, that's cool. Okay, let's see. I think we've given 5 minutes for people to jump in if they're going to jump into the call. I'll give you the speaking order so you guys can follow along. Our first speaker is going to be Lydia Cruz Maklet. Our second speaker is going to be Gloria Jones. Our third speaker is going to be Brandon Spars. Our fourth speaker will be Jonna Madigan. Our fifth speaker will be Ron Jones. He's also our guest storyteller tonight. Our sixth speaker is John White. And our seventh speaker will be Linda Kennedy. So let's go ahead and kick this off with our first storyteller. Our leadoff storyteller is Lydia Cruz Macklett, and she is representing the Storytelling Guild, Yours Truly. This will be Lydia's debut story at a SAC genre event, so let's make sure we show her some love. She was born in Puerto Rico and came to California to pursue a master's degree in bilingual education. Besides a master, she also got a mister, her husband of 41, Dave. Let's hear it for Dave and that master's. As a retired teacher, she was going to tell us a joke about teachers, but none of them worked. It's kind of like teachers. Anyway, instead, she says, teaching was like a walk in the park, Jurassic Park. The title of her story tonight is Wait a Minute. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to SAC member Lydia Cruz Macklett.
Thank you. To celebrate my 70th birthday in October, I want to do something to face one of my fears. I want to jump out of a plane. Wait a minute. No, I'm not doing that. If I jump out of a plane, I'll be so scared that I will forget to open the parachute and drop down like a sack of potatoes, breaking all 206 bones in my body. And at this age, I'm very fond of my bones. What was I thinking? See, as I'm getting older, I thought that I'll be this fearless woman. But in fact, it's the opposite. Now I'm afraid to try new things. And I'm afraid of doing things I was not afraid to do before. Let me give you just two examples of my struggles with fears. Now I'm afraid of traveling, something that I love, but the most ridiculous one, I'm afraid of the rain. Do you remember the recent rains we had here in California? Well, my friend Juanita and her husband invited my husband Dave and me to go to a dinner at a restaurant. So the night of the dinner was raining, and I thought, ooh, I'm not gonna go. I don't want to get wet and maybe catch a cold or have an accident in the freeway, or worse yet, die. I'm not going for a dinner. Wait a minute. My mother would say, ¿y qué es que estás hecha de papel o de azúcar que no te puedes mojar? Is it that now you are made out of paper or sugar that you can get wet? I'm Puerto Rican. I grew up in a tropical island. It rained there almost every day. What would happen if I get wet or catch a cold? Would I melt like the Witch of the West? Dave is a great driver and he's driving. There will be no accident in the freeway, Lydia. You're going, I told myself. I went and we had a great time. My friends told us all about their plans to go to Australia and shared pictures of their adorable grandbabies. Yeah. We told them about our plans to go to Vietnam and complained that we still have no grandchildren. Then Juanita said, well, since your daughter and her husband are business people, why don't you send them a PowerPoint presentation with a refresher on how to make babies? What a great idea. It's so fun to be with friends. I'm glad I defied the rain and went with them. But after COVID, I'm not sure I can get out of my comfort zone to go traveling. See, Dave and I had plans to go to Vietnam, but as the time approached, I was hesitant. Actually, I was so afraid to go. I didn't want to go. Why? Because friends and family members would say things like, why do you want to go to a communist country? With so many beautiful places in America, why do you want to go there? Aren't you afraid of catching COVID or malaria or yellow fever? Oh my God, they are right. What I'm thinking, I don't want to go. But wait a minute. Dave is so excited about going. We already paid for everything. I can't let Dave down. I cannot let myself down. I have to go. But what can I do? What can I control? So I decided to take a quarter of my suitcase and turned it into a small drugstore that rivaled Walgreens or CVS. Anything you needed was in that suitcase. We also decided to have, of course, a required vaccination and also a recommended one. And we have extra health insurance in case we had to spend more time there. And we went. And we had a great time. We didn't have a headache, not a mosquito bite, not even a sunburn. We went everywhere we wanted to go, all the worries for nothing. The people of Vietnam are very friendly. Many of them spoke English, and when they didn't, we used hand signals, food, drinks, where are the bathrooms. We visited ancient monuments and modern cities. I have to tell you, Vietnam has spectacular natural beauty. I love Halong Bay with these gigantic mystical rocks. And I also enjoyed visiting the Mekong Delta with its floating markets. Something that shocked me was to see the amount of motorcycles everywhere, especially in Ho Chi Minh City. More motorcycles than cars. So I asked our trusted tour guide, Tui, how do people cross the road to go to the other side? And he said, well, you look where you're going. You don't look to the right or the left. You don't run. You don't slow down. You keep the same pace because the motorcyclist will go around you. And when you get to the other side of the road, pinch yourself, and if it hurts, you survived. Well, I have to tell you, we did it. We crossed the road. My heart was pounding. I thought I was going to die out with fear. But we made it. Tui also showed us digital pictures of things that people do with their motorcycles. Besides transporting people, sometimes I saw 4 people in one motorcycle. They also use them to transport things and animals. My favorite picture was of 2 motorcyclists, one in front of the other. This is on the highway, carrying a pole, the end of a pole. And in the middle, dangling from the middle of the pole, was a roasted pig in the middle of the highway. Tui showed us so many pictures like that. We laughed until our bellies hurt. I realized that if I had obeyed my fears, I would not have had so much fun with my friends, and I would not have learned about this culture that I knew so little about, and now I appreciate. And you know what? I'm going to jump out of that plane after all. But wait a minute. Don't you think? I think it would be more impactful if I wait until I turn 80 to do it.
All right. Thank you very much, Lydia, for kicking it off for us. And you're absolutely right. Hitting the ground at 80 is more impactful. So, take a couple of moments here. Does anybody want to offer up what they heard Lydia do as a humorous technique? I like the illusion where she alluded back to what we knew in the past. That was kind of fun. No mosquito bites, no rain, no sunburn. Are you sure you were on a vacation, Lydia? Because that doesn't sound like a vacation if you didn't get any of those. That was good. And then the motorcycle, that's brilliant. Pinch yourself. I think we'll all remember that one. Okay. Let's move on to our next storyteller. Our next storyteller is Gloria Jones, and she is representing the Storytelling Guild, Sacramento Storytellers Guild. Gloria is a wife, mother of 3, grandmother of 7, and a retired teacher, and not necessarily in that order. The story we are about to hear is a shortened version of a play she wrote many years ago for her 5th grade class. As an aside, she will be joining us from Panama. Yes, the place with the canal. And we'll be catching a flight early tomorrow morning. So this is an extra special treat for us to have her present at our event while traveling. The title of her story is A Play on Words. Please join me in giving a warm sack welcome to Gloria Jones.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Now we're going to go back to 5th grade. You'll all remember 5th grade, that time in your life when you were filled with confidence and all your classmates and teachers were so kind to you. Well, perhaps it wasn't quite like that, but anyway, we're going to talk about a little girl named Kay, and we're going to tell her story because Kay is okay with the math and the history, but she really hates grammar. Every time she tries to study and tries to diagram sentences, she just gets so confused, she just can't figure it out. So one night, after she was finished with her homework, or just almost finished, she threw the book down. She said to her mother, I hate it, I hate it, I hate this. I wish they would just overthrow the rules of grammar and we just never have it again. And her mother, long suffering, said, okay, you don't believe that. It'll come. And she said, no, it won't. I hate it. Just overthrow it. And off she went to bed, just angry. She pulled the covers up over her head. And as she was falling asleep, she heard a sound in her room. And she thought it must be her mom coming in to, oh, no, do something, put clothes away, whatever. So she peeked up around the covers, and who should she see in her room but a queenly looking woman. This woman had the crown and the robes and everything. She's just a queen. And she begins to speak. She looks at Kay and she says, do you know who I am? And Kay's just wide-eyed. You know, I don't know. She said, I am Natasha Nam. I am the ruler. I name all things in the word kingdom. Without me, there wouldn't even be a name for anything in the word kingdom. Do you know how much you should respect me? And Kay's like, well, should I bow or something? And Natasha says, well, a curtsy would do. But I am here to talk about the humiliation I have suffered under the laws of grammar. I want you to know that I have been objectified. Yes, I, Natasha now, from time to time must become a direct object. Yes, a direct object. And do you know what direct objects do? They receive action. And let me tell you, little girl, there are all kinds of actions out there, and some of them are absolutely horrible. And I have been the object of each and every one of them. It's been so, I don't know. Abigail, adjective, where are you? Come in and tell her how it's been for me. And Kay watched as a bedraggled, tired looking young woman walks in. And she says, well, she's been sad and tense and I don't know, just kind of cross, cranky, and crazy. She said this out of the corner of her mouth, so Natasha wouldn't hear her. But you know who did hear her? Kay. And then Abigail went on. I am so tired of this job. I have to follow her around everywhere she goes. I have to tell how she looks, how she feels, how she sounds. And I want this law of grammar overthrown too. I'm sick of it. You hear me? I'm sick of it. And then, as Kay said to the surprise, out of the mist came a kingly looking figure. And he had too had the crown and the robes and the whole thing. And he announced himself as Virgil Bird. And he said, I am the king of the word kingdom. And I want you to know that I am the hardest working guy in this bunch. I have to provide the engine. I have to provide the action to keep every sentence going. I even have to make sure that people know that they exist, that there's being, and I have to link other verbs to other verbs. I do so much, and I think I'm overworked, and I too would like to see things overthrown and just shaken up a bit in here. Come, Andy Adverb, you come and you tell them exactly how I do what I do. And in walks a bedraggled young man, and he looks like he is just sick and tired of the whole thing too. And he goes, man, everybody leans on me. And I mean, I'm tired of it. I mean, I've got to tell the when and the where and the how that everything happens. And not only that, man, nobody else wants to intensify things. And I gotta even describe other adverbs and adjectives and everything. And I've just had it with the where, when, and how. I think we should overthrow this too. And Kay is just amazed at all of this. She's just looking around. But Natasha, having seen that three others are also interested in getting rid of things, she, she snaps her fingers and said, I who name all things now call this court. And to Kay's surprise, it's no longer her bedroom. It was now a courtroom with a big old podium and two lieutenants and a man behind the podium with a big hat. And there was a jury section, maybe, and a little audience. And she is just flabbergasted. And she doesn't know what to think. And at the top of the podium, the man with the hat was the governor of Graham. And he is surprised. He says, Natasha, you have called us to court. What's going on? What's going on? Why are we here? And where is the judge? And one of the lieutenants who stood by him said, well, I'm afraid that the judge is in the middle of a very important paragraph. He has been sentenced and he will not be able to join us. So you, Governor Garner, will have to adjudicate this case. So he says, well, all right, if that's what I must do, then that's what I must do. What is the problem here? What are the problems? And then Natasha says, there are lots of problems here. But a lieutenant who's standing beside the governor says, we don't have any problems here. We are all on the same page. But Kay says, well, I don't know if we really are. And as Kay begins to speak, Natasha and Virgil push her forward in front of the governor. And they say, Governor, she wants you overthrown. Well, Kay is upset by this. She says, well, no, I was just struggling with my homework and I didn't understand. I didn't. But the governor is looking at her very sternly and he is saying, well, we'll just have to see about this. And very soon, a quiet little lady steps up and she is wearing her hat and her white gloves and she is nervous and she announces that her name is Constance. She is also known as Connie. I'm known as Connie Conjunction. And I like putting things together. That's what I like to do. And I'm very committed to my job, but I become annoyed sometimes because I think I have things all done and I'm ready to go. And Abigail and Andy will jump in and change things. We can't just have a dog and a cat run. It has to be a beautiful dog and a strange cat running wildly. I just want to get things together and have to just go on about their business. And let's not even talk about the prepositions. Ooh, at the word prepositions, the whole courtroom goes a little nuts. Everybody begins to groan, and out the little goblins come. They're rolling around, they're stepping over people, they're knocking over stuff. They're just everywhere, and everybody is annoyed with them except the governor of grammar, who seems to think they're very cute. And oh my gosh, they're over and under, round and up and by. And then they begin to say, we're over, under, round and by. There's nothing we won't try. And we love you, Governor Grammar, and we love the laws of grammar. And he says, oh, bless their little hearts. Aren't they wonderful? They're just so wonderful that they give so much information to our sentences. So he's all enamored of them. But Andy says, well, bless their little hearts, but they don't have to deal with any extras, if you know what I mean. And Kay thinks about it. Extras? You mean the prefixes and the suffixes? Is that what you're talking about? And then she thinks a little longer and she says, you're right. I don't think I've ever heard of an unbeyondable. And she laughs at her own joke. Well, no one else laughs, but she does. And the governor says, yes, the prefixes and the suffix, they came over from the old countries. They are our forefathers. They bring that great Greek and Latin influence to help other words loosen up. Without them, there could be a crash in the context market. And nobody wants that. And everybody grumbles and says, want that. And then suddenly up steps a very stately young woman who says her name is Paula, pronoun. She says, well, I spend most of my time alone. It's just me, myself, and I spend half my time with my reflexes and the other half chasing antecedents. And these days, chasing antecedents is very, very challenging. Ah, well, Natasha listens to Paula for a minute. And she said, oh, boo-hoo-hoo. Ah, but Paula continues. She says, I would love to have company of the beloved prefixes and suffixes. She cuts her eyes over at Natasha and says, I bet all the complaining is coming from the usual four. Huh. Well, things are getting pretty heated up. So the governor is saying, what shall we do about this? When all of a sudden, Connie jumps up again and she's become nervous, more so nervous at the change of things. And she says, well, maybe I'm really okay with my job. It's not so bad. It's not so bad. And one of the lieutenants whispers to the other lieutenant and says, Connie, conjunction, has trouble coordinating her thoughts sometimes. And well, all of a sudden, the governor thinks about it and he says, well, we've heard from just about everybody, but we haven't heard from the interjections. And Virgil says, no, we should not hear from the interjections. They're much too emotional to be taken seriously. But then upstairs steps Isaac interjection, who says, wow, golly, gee, I love my job. I'm always there when anything exciting happens. I don't have any problems with the punctuation. It's all okay with me. The governor is very stern now. He looks at Kay and says, young lady, you have caused quite a ruckus. And she says, it's not me, it's their fault. And she points at Abigail and Virgil and Natasha. She says, they're the ones that wanted to overthrow you. And Abigail and Virgil say, well, how about that? This is her fault and she doesn't want to take the blame for it. So the governor says, I think they're right. It's your fault, Kay, and I'm going to punish you. I'm going to have you diagramming sentences from a book that I shall choose. And Kay says, okay. She kind of knows how to diagram sentences. She doesn't like it, but she knows how to do it. So she says, what's the name of the book? And he says, War and Peace. And she says, War and Peace. Okay. She's not familiar with this book and it only has 3 words. So she's hopeful. She says, I just have one question. Does it have many pictures? Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Gloria. A play on words. I caught a lot of puns in there. Very, very, very cool. Conjunction likes to put things together, and interjections are too emotional to be taken seriously. Those are great lines. All right. Thank you, Gloria, and thank you for presenting with us today, all the way from Panama. We'll get some comments in the chat from our audience. Excellent. Okay. Our next storyteller is going to be none other than the infamous Brandon Spars. He is representing the Storytelling Guild Do Tell Story Swap. Brandon is a man of few words, so his intro will be brief. He is used to teaching classrooms full of teenagers, grades 9 through 12. Tonight, Brandon is especially delighted that this audience will actually be listening to him. And for that, he thanks us all. The title of his story is Otis Sapphire and the Shrimp Paste. Please join me in giving a warm sack welcome to Brandon Spars.
Thank you. So there I was. It was the spring of 2015 with my daughter on a campus tour of UC San Diego. I had been pretty quiet during the tour, but secretly I had already printed a map and I had timed this very carefully. And when the tour got near the geography building, I grabbed my daughter's arm and dragged her with me up to the 4th floor. We went rogue. And when those elevator doors opened, there hanging on a door was a mailbox. And on the mailbox was the name in capital letters, Professor Otis Sapphire. Oh, no, my daughter said. Oh, yes, I said. But inside, I was not so certain. God, I hoped he would recognize me. God, I hoped he would remember meeting me when he came to my high school to do a school assembly. You see, Otis Sapphire had written a book that was the central text in my humanities classroom for 15 years. It had inspired me to write a manuscript of my own. And I had developed this idea that if I could get guidance from him, or if he were to write an introduction for me, I might get published too. Well, I emailed and emailed, he never answered, but a stroke of luck brought him to our high school for a school assembly. I got to give him a glorious, lavish introduction. I got to eat lunch with him. And then, as he was preparing to leave with trembling hands, I gave him my manuscript on a thumb drive. He smiled and he thanked me. But as I watched him head toward the double doors to leave, he veered over and I saw him drop the thumb drive in the trash. Well, I was pretty heartbroken by this, and I stopped working on the manuscript. But 5 years later, when my daughter expressed interest in applying to UCSD and wanted to go and tour the campus, it refueled my hopes and refired my imagination. I spent a week straight working on my manuscript and I finished it, 600 pages. And now here I was at his office to present him with my manuscript. I knocked. Dad, my daughter said, and she was meaning to say, he's already told you he doesn't want to read it. You've already tried this. But this time I had finished the manuscript. 600 pages, baby. And I have this. I held up a supersized tube of Indonesian shrimp paste. Her eyes widened in astonishment. You brought shrimp paste? You see, at our lunch together, he let it be known that he prided himself in speaking 17 different languages. And when he found out my wife was from Indonesia and that she also worked at the school, he insisted she join us for lunch, and we had a delightful conversation in Indonesian about all things Indonesian, including Indonesian cuisine. And Otis bemoaned the fact that he couldn't cook some of his favorite dishes there in San Diego. He couldn't get the ingredients, chief among them, terasi, Indonesian shrimp paste. Well, my wife had joked the next time she went to Indonesia, she'd bring him some. Ha, 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 ha. Well, here I was with the shrimp paste. I would begin with the shrimp. No. I would begin with my manuscript, then the shrimp. God, I hoped he recognized me. God, I hoped he remembered our lunch together. I knocked again. Dad, my daughter said, and she was meaning to say, he's not here. Let's go. But he should be here. There are his office hours printed right there on the door. No matter. I had prepared for this. I had written a cover letter explaining my manuscript, how we had met, our lunch together, the gift of the shrimp paste. And so I was prepared to put it all in his box. Now, his box was enormous, but the slot was not big enough to hold all 600 pages. Not nearly. I began to file them through, 100 pages or so at a time. The hallway was quiet. There were 2 open doors from which you could hear the murmur of academic discussion. There were restrooms at the end, a coat rack with empty coat hangers. I had finished filing my manuscript, and I was now working the supersized tube of shrimp paste through the slot, when suddenly it gave and slid right through. There, I said. Dad, my daughter hissed, but I had already caught a whiff of the potent vapors. She pointed at the corner of his mailbox where bubbles were forming. The tube had burst inside Otis's box, and sure enough, streaks of neon pink shrimp paste began dripping down Otis's door. Get paper towels, I said, and wet them down. My wife informed us later this was probably the worst thing we could do. Adding moisture, water to the saline fermentation causes an expansion in volume up to 3 times. And sure enough, as I began to wipe with the damp towels, they foamed into enormous loops and circles. Shrimp gas began rolling down the hallway. From one of the doors, one of the people called, I thought at the last meeting we decided no microwaving fish. The other door simply slammed shut. Dad, my daughter said, and there was a note of desperation in her voice, as if she were meaning to say, we're going to get in trouble. We have to go. But my name was on every page of that manuscript, and the cover letter linked me indelibly to this blasted shrimp paste. I stuck a finger through the slot and tried to catch hold of something, but I couldn't. I needed some kind of tool, an implement. The coat hangers. Perfect. I found with a downward thrusting motion and an upward ripping, I could extract 30, 40 pages at once, and I let them fall about me on the hallway floor. My daughter had no choice but to set about gathering the stained, torn pages into her arms. I put my foot on Otis's door, right in the middle of one of those fizzing Enzos for leverage, and continued to pull and rip my work from Otis's massive box. The stench is eye-watering. Well, I finally extracted all of it, and we finally made our escape. But when we got to the first floor and the elevator doors opened, our hearts sank. There was a group of silver-haired men, all of them wearing tweed coats. One of them was even tamping a pipe. And right in the middle, a diminutive man, the only one not sporting a stylish mustachio. His close-cropped beard formed a circular frame around his face, giving the impression that he was looking back at you as if from a looking glass. It was Otis Sapphire. Instinctively, my daughter hunched over, pulled her hood over her head, and clutching my fetid, dripping manuscript, we brushed past them and went crashing through the double doors, but not before we heard one of the other professors ask, "Why, Otis, what is that curious odor?" I looked back just in time as the double doors were about to close to see Otis lift his small, intelligent eyes, and they met mine. And since he was about to go up to find his office, as if it had been in some kind of strange, mysterious act of vandalism, all I could think of was, God, I hope he does not recognize me. God, I hope he does not remember a single thing about me. Thank you.
Great job, Brandon. Yes, the irony of it all. I hope he recognizes me. I hope he doesn't. Beautiful, beautiful. I still hear stories about shrimp paste coming from UC San Diego. So I think you have a legend brewing there.
Uh-oh, he never contacted me, but I did publish the book. So
Shows him. Good job, Brandon. Excellent. And congrats on the published manuscript.
thank you.
Give some comments to Brandon in the chat. As we move on to our next storyteller, who is going to be Jonna Madigan. She is representing the Storytelling Guild Tell Me a Story. Jonna is a native Angelino, currently living in Burbank, California. When she's not telling stories, she practices yoga, meditation, and the art of staying single. She's thought about moving, but her parole officer keeps bringing her back. The title of her story is My Time. Please join me in giving a warm sack welcome to Jonna Madigan.
In 2012, my friend Kimberly made me promise that we would, after years of being single, get back into the world of dating. Now, Kimberly was younger and she'd spent the last 10 years raising her son and establishing her career. I, on the other hand, was currently out of an on-again, off-again relationship that had gone on for well over a decade. But true to my word, I kept my promise. And keeping in mind all of the warnings I'd gotten from friends about how tricky it could be to date when you were a bit older, especially because they said men over 50 are so often looking for a purse or a nurse. I created my profile anyway. And along with a picture of myself standing in front of St. Paul's Cathedral in London, I posted them on a website called Our Time, which is specifically designed for more seasoned people. In fact, that picture garnered me my first response from a man who wanted to know why I was saluting the camera. Really? Saluting the camera? I mean, anybody could tell I was waving. Hello? The second response I got was from a man that told me he was retired, owned his own home, only ate in Asian restaurants that were inexpensive and had an early bird special, hated to travel, and never went to coffee shops. Well, I thought, why would anyone respond to that? Except to say, I'm an old fart too, and I'd like nothing better than to sit on the couch in front of the TV with you, waiting to die. Now, don't get me wrong, it wasn't his frugality that put me off. It was the simple fact that there was no joy or sense of adventure in his introduction, which I think should be your best foot forward. And if that was his best foot, well, I'll leave the rest up to you. Now, for some reason, the fact that I'm a vegetarian in my profile motivated several people to send me pictures of themselves standing with dead animals that they had either fished or hunted. Now, in desperation, I finally asked one of them, why? He said, I thought you'd laugh. Well, I didn't. But after a time, I finally saw someone that appeared promising. His profile said he was politically progressive and was dedicating his entire adult life to the pursuit of education. Now, looking back, I think that probably meant he'd never had a job, but at the time it was provocative. The first thing I'd like to tell you is that 6'5" is a lot taller in person than it is on paper. And as we went to sit down in the tiny table at the coffee shop, he whacked his head on the overhead light. When I looked up, his face was so red, it was purple. I said, "Are you all right?" "Yes," he said through clenched teeth. "I'm working on my anger management problems." Well, I was in full support of that, but it wasn't a ride I thought I'd like to sign on for. But then there was Bill. Bill had long, white, curly hair, like Albert Einstein. He had been a Brown Beret back in the day and was currently running a nonprofit that was dealing with inequities in underserved communities with regard to environment. He was fun and he was adorable, and we had a great time for a while. But finally, we had to admit the spark just wasn't there. So we settled on friendship, and every month until COVID, we met at Echo Park for a walk and coffee and conversation at the lake. In fact, a funny thing about Bill, when I first met him, was he wanted to know how to recognize me when he saw me, because he said my posted picture was at a bit of a distance. And I told him there'd be no problem because I'd be the only one carrying the biography of Che Guevara. We were simpatico in a way. Well, things weren't moving along quickly, so I let my friend Mary Kay talk me into 2 blind dates. It turned out they were 2 blind dates too many. The first one was with a man named John. Now, he seemed nice enough until on the way to the restaurant in the car, he told me that he leaves his hearing aids in at night so that he can hear his partner's purring. I mean, really, who says something like that to someone you just met? And what was all this purring about? Did he have a cat? Because I knew it wasn't going to be me. And then the second gentleman's name was Ken, and he was a movie buff. So our conversation was moving along swimmingly until he said, "I think John Wayne is the greatest American actor of all time." Is it just me? I mean, what was there left to talk about? Maybe I'm just picky. Well, it turned out that Kimberly wasn't doing much better. She dated a man she met at Costco until it turned out that the big box man wasn't such a bargain. And then a jazz musician, but he only called when he had a gig in town, and that really wasn't enough. You know, she really was the prettiest mother at the PTA, but she didn't want the hassle of dating her son's coaches or teachers or the single fathers of his friends. She told me that when she gave up dating, it was the best thing she'd ever done. It freed her to get a certificate in personal coaching. She started a book club. She spent time with people that really mattered, like her friends and her family. And despite the fact that her son had announced to her when all of this dating began that he didn't want any more of her undivided attention than her imbalanced personal life was currently providing, he thought it was okay to have her around a bit more. Now me, remember that on again, off again relationship I told you about? Well, suddenly it was on again. And for the next 6 years, we had a great time. We created hundreds of happy memories, traveled, survived his 2 cancer surgeries and the death of his elderly dog. And then suddenly he disappeared. Well, now I know he didn't die because the cleaning person we both employ keeps me posted as she tirelessly tries to put us back together. She tells me every week, "I just don't understand." Well, neither do I. I mean, we were a COVID pod. Well, I haven't accessed my Our Time account in years, maybe even a decade. and I don't have any plans to. You know, I haven't given up on romance because you never know what's waiting just around the corner. But right now, sitting in my easy chair with both cats and my dog in pajamas that I can wear anytime, day or night, eating anything I like with a glass of wine and in full control of the remote, I can't think of anything better than my time. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Jana. That was great. Caught a lot of little puns in there. A little bit of rhyme. We have seasoned people, men looking for a personal nurse. That was pretty great. Some guys like that early bird special restaurant. Sit on the couch waiting with you, waiting to die. That was brilliant. 6'5" taller in person than on paper. That was great. Ed was intelligent, fun, but no spark. 2 blind dates turned out to be 2 blind dates too many. That was good. And of course, the big box guy was no bargain. Those are all lines. Excellent. Thank you very much. Put some comments in there for Jana. Move on to our next storyteller. Our next storyteller is Ron Jones. He's a guest storyteller tonight and a past board member of SAC. And he's coming to us from San Francisco. Peep, peep, squawk, quaw, tells the story of what happens when birds in his backyard get out of control. The point to note, the humor in this story is more visual than dialogue. A funny story about serious issues. Of course, it is a true story. Well, sort of. The title of his story is Birds. Please join me in giving a warm SAC welcome to Ron Jones.
Thanks. I got birds living in my backyard. I got birds living in my backyard. They love my backyard. They love to do loop-de-loops off those warm currents of air, fly on top of my roof, kick gravel on my head. These birds, well, everything was copacetic. That means fine. Until one day my neighbor, Mr. Arthur P. Anderson, placed upon his deck a blue pool of water. The little bluebird thought it was theirs. Every morning they lined up with little blue goggles and little blue inner tubes and went swimming in their little blue pool of water. Brown birds thought to themselves, hey, brothers and sisters, look, they got some water. Maybe if we do some brown bird praying, we might get some water. And that's just what they did. Some brown bird praying. No water. Bluebirds became very arrogant and very superior, like bluebirds tend to get. You know the kind I'm talking about. And they invited one of those brown birds to come up and sing to them. She was a long-legged brown bird. Bluebirds became very excited. Hey, baby, take off those feathers, honey. Brown birds became very alarmed. But brothers and sisters, look, they got the water. And now they have our women folk. No more praying, brothers and sisters, but some flying and some shitting. And that's just what they did. A spiral of brown birds high in the sky. And at just the right moment, lifted those little feathers and shit all over those bluebirds. Bluebirds were very angry. They found themselves the biggest bluebird they could find, a mother of a bird. You know the kind I'm talking about. Brown birds now became very alarmed. Oh, brothers and sisters, look, they got themselves a B-17 stealth fighter bomber bird. We better do something really fast. And they did. They found themselves a big brown bird. A mother of a bird. Now these two giant big birds could no longer fly. They could no longer sing. But they were lifted high in the sky by their respective societies, where in the middle of the night they screeched at each other, lost their balance, fell to the earth, stuck in the earth, beak first, feathers flying. Little brown birds got around. We could spend the rest of our lives watching brothers and sisters fall from these towers in the sky. Along comes a red bird. When the red robin comes bobbing along, no more trouble when she starts singing that, oh, sweet song. Wake up, you sleepyheads. Get up, get out of bed. Live, love, laugh, and be happy. But I said she was a poet bird. Mother and child too tired to sleep. Freedom is the right to eat. Curbside saints are hearing voices. Freedom is the right to choices. Briefcase soldiers getting older, hope they too get to go and be older. Child in the playground slowly swings. Freedom. Freedom is life's simplest things. So the little brown birds and little bluebirds got themselves together like little children tend to do and made themselves a pool of water to go swimming in. And every morning they went swimming together, brown birds and bluebirds. But most important of all, they learned about freedom. Freedom from fear. Freedom from hate. Freedom for everybody, don't you know? Freedom. Birds. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ron. Boy, sound effects in that story were amazing. And I think there's a great metaphorical lesson there. Beautiful, beautiful. Let's send some comments to Ron in the chat. Y'all be thinking about birds in your sleep tonight, I bet. Our next storyteller is John White. He is representing the Storytelling Guild Story Masters. A few years ago, John turned 60, and it has changed his life, and not for the better. John understands the importance of knowing your audience, so he wants to be clear that these are his experiences and his outlook on aging and his alone. To those in the audience who are 60 or older, John sees you and acknowledges you that you are aging gracefully with class and dignity. But alas, such is not the case with John. The title of his story is The Package. Please join me in giving a warm sack welcome to John White.
Thank you, Lee. On April 12th, 2020, I turned 60, and not in a good way. I mean, not at all. Just to be clear, I've always enjoyed my birthdays. Birthday 1 through 59, I celebrated, enthusiastic, without any baggage. And then 60 hit me, and it all changed. My finances weren't the same. My career was suffering, and my health began to have issues. And let's just face it, 2020 has to be like one of the worst years that go down in history. It was so bad that the highlight of my 2020 was in February when I drove to LAX. For those of you that don't know LAX drive involves the San Diego freeway, which was invented and created by the devil. It's the worst stretch of freeway and road known to mankind. That was the highlight of my year. Let me explain. I was driving my girlfriend, Mamois, back to LAX, which she would then take a flight returning to New York. I was sad to see her go, but I was excited because we had plans in 2 months to rendezvous in Kauai to celebrate my 60th birthday. Let that sink in. 7 days in paradise with this beautiful, fun, adventurous woman. I remember as I saw her plane ascend into the heavens, telling myself, you know, John, you're as old as dirt, but life still can be good. I don't have to tell you what happened to my plans. I had to cancel them. We all had to cancel them. And when my birthday actually came around, April 12th, 2020, I was quarantined in my apartment and celebrating my birthday on Zoom with friends and family. I'm grateful, but I'm going to be real. I was disappointed. I was upset and I was irritated. Every one of these people was saying, unmute yourself, unmute yourself. I just hung up. What a disaster. 2 years later, April 2022, Maman's coming back. Maybe these 60s are going to be okay. In an interesting twist, she informs me that she's bringing her son, Lucas, 8 years old. She says, honey, think of it as a package. Package? I mean, is she like a marketing maven? When I think of package and traveling, I think of bundling the flight and the hotel and the car, and maybe you get a free luau. Package? Look, she's a mom, I'm a dad of other kids. I get it. That's fine. Now, when Mama has traveled out here, I've always paid for her expenses. And so I'm going to pay for hers. I figure in an insight of just sort of practicality and generosity, I'll pick up the tab for the boy. So in an insight as to how it is to be 60, good news always has bad news embedded in it. You see, I've got a huge travel credit for my canceled Kauai trip, and I can use that to pay for the trip of them coming to LAX. I'm sitting there, though, trying to reconcile this trip that never happened. And I'm seeing 2 years ago, 7 days in Kauai has been downgraded to 5 days in LAX. In Los Angeles, what a disaster. All right, I call up the customer service person at American Express. Customer service is a misnomer. It should never take 3 hours to buy 2 tickets. We finally get to the part where she says, how will you pay for this, sir? And I say, kind of boastingly, well, I've got a huge credit for my canceled Kauai trip. Why don't you just apply that? I'm sure there'll be a residual that I can use for future travel. She crunches the number and informs me, sir, there's no credit. There's actually a debit. You owe $650. I freaking lose it. Jesus, just take me. I know we've had a rocky relationship. I've denied you. I haven't listened to you. But in this moment, take me, show me a sign. This is too much. I give the big guy a minute to intervene. And the silence is broken by the travel agent. He said, sir, it appears Jesus isn't going to pay the tab. Is there a credit card you'd like me to charge this one? Fine, I tendered the credit card. The package is paid for. On the day the package arrives, I wake up early. It's not necessary. They're landing at noon, but I'm now 62 and I'm old and sleeping in is not an option. I now go to bed early because I'm just bored with life, and I can't sleep in because the aches and pains like to wake me up early, so I'm fully alert and completely irritable before the sun rises. I get in the car to drive on LAX, inching my way, and I just start to spiral into this just darkness. You see, I've been informed by Memoir that I will be introduced as a friend. A friend. I mean, I get it. Memoir's not technically divorced. She's been separated for 6 years, and it doesn't make sense. So intellectually, I get it, but I can't help but be hurt. And I'm going down this list of things I've done for this trip. I paid for her ticket. I paid for the boys' ticket. I'm driving in LAX. Oh God, he's going to want to go to Disneyland. I hate Disneyland. I got to pay for Disneyland. It's just too much. I'm just losing it. I try to call myself, John, just hang in there. But listen, it's disrespectful, isn't it? Not even an honorary Uncle John. Friend? I'm about to make my way to LAX, and I get a text. Turns out the wrong travel information has been sent to me. Mama and her son have landed 2 hours ago, and they've gone ahead and gone to their friend's Anze. You see, the last twist, the last indignity on this is Momoa can't stay with me because we're just friends. And I haven't seen her in a couple of years. I'm not an actor. I don't have a poker face. And somehow I'm going to blow our cover. Her son is 8, but he has male DNA. And if we hang out too long, at some point, it's going to hit him. He's go, that dude's not a friend. I get it. I get it. Fine. I go over to Anze's, and the plan is on the 5-day trip that I'm paying the whole thing for, I'm going to see them 2 different times, they decide, on 2-hour stints, and that should be safe. Jesus, I just couldn't believe it. I go there, I just say a little prayer, I go in, and it happens. I start bonding with Lucas. I'm just saying, babies, animals, and kids like me. We go back and forth, it's this, that, and the other, and all of a sudden the unexpected. Mr. White, would you drive us to Go-Kart World in Carson? This is not part of the plan. I look for Anze or Momoa to intervene. They don't. So I say, sure. And then I got to break the bad news to him. You see, Lucas likes supercars, Ferraris, Lamborghinis, Bugattis. Lucas, sit down. I have something to tell you. Mr. White drives a Prius. He looked at me. What happened, Mr. White? Well, Lucas, I'm 60 and I'm old. And when you're old, you become practical and economical. He stands up and walks to me and gives me the sweetest hug and whispers in my ear, I'm sorry, Mr. White.
Oh.
God bless that boy. We drive down to Carson. I'm not dressed for it. I've got salmon-colored chinos, white linen shirt, matching cordovan shoes and belts. I'm ready for a brunch at Beverly Hills, not go-kart in Carson. We arrive at the parking lot, and we're transported to like the 50s. It's a scene from Happy Days. I half expect Fonzie or James Dean to show up. All these muscle cars, everyone's in their denim, their white t-shirt, their cigarettes are folded on there, and everyone's revving their engine. I try to fit in and rev my engine. You don't rev a Prius. It's just... Lucas sees my predicament because we're bonding, and he honks the horn just as I'm getting out of the car. All the men turn to stare at me and see me in my salmon-colored pants and my bright blue Prius. Oh, the look of scorn. I'm so emasculating. I might as well have just gone into my wallet and handed my man card. It was just terrible. We go into the go-kart world. We wait 2 hours to get in, and we finally are in the ride. Lucas and I are driving. You may have heard that I'm almost like a world-class driver. I'm very, very good. But for some reason, I'm getting lapped by every go-kart there. Either my car is inferior, or I may have gained 25 pounds during the pandemic. Whatever the excuse, I'm getting lapped. The last indignity, this little, well, I guess we can't cuss. This little guy, this little punk passes me and seems to say to me, aren't you the guy that drove the Prius? It was just too much. It's time to go eat. Momoa remembers that she likes In-N-Out because they don't have it in New York. Anze Googles it, and it turns out the closest In-N-Out is at LAX. I paint the most insincere, inauthentic smile on my face. I go, LAX, twice in one day. This package just keeps on coming. We eat, and I'm driving them home. And then suddenly it dawns on me, I'm the only person in the front. I'm the driver, and all 3 passengers are in the back seat. I'm not even a friend now. I've been downgraded to an Uber driver, just looking for a 5-star rating and maybe a tip. It was too much. For those of you that are interested, we were able to carve out a little quality time. Momoa and I, she told her son that she was going out to have cocktails with friends. Lucas found it curious because they live in New York and she's not been out to California. How would she have so many friends out in California? She said, Lucas, honey, Your mom has plenty of friends, lots of them. Wait a minute. I thought I was the friend. There's others like me. John, breathe, be calm. You're in your 60s. And apparently it's all part of the package.
All right, thank you very much, John. That was great. Jesus appears not to be paying the bill there, John. The aches and pains wake him up early. Now I know why I get up early. Bonds with Lucas, that was a big twist. Mr. White drives a Prius. Lunch in Beverly Hills, not go-karting in Carson. What a great dichotomy there. Was it an inferior car? Or maybe gained 20 pounds during the pandemic? Those are all brilliant lines, John. Excellent. Excellent. Let's write some comments to John in the chat. Show some love. Okay. We're going to wrap this up with our last speaker of the event. Our next storyteller is Linda Kennedy. She is representing the Storytelling Guild, Foothill Storytellers Guild. Linda has been telling stories for over 30 years and has told at many of these SAC genre events. Her repertoire spans the genres, but admittedly, her favorite is traditional folktales from around the world. Tonight, she will be telling a tale from India. The title of her story is The Clever Antics of the Trickster Gopal Bhar. Please join me in giving a warm SAC welcome to Linda Kennedy.
Well, thank you. But before I start, I want to tell John, about 7 weeks ago, maybe 6 weeks ago, I had my 82nd birthday. It gets better. And I drive a Ford Escape, 11 years, but it only has 85,000 miles on it. Yeah, it's almost new. Anyway, looks like I'm the only one telling a folktale tonight, so here we go. Oh, let me talk a little bit about Gopal Bhar. Sometimes he's called a court jester, sometimes he's a trickster, but he's always, always makes me happy and makes me laugh. So I hope he makes you laugh too. Long ago, in a land we now call India, there was a governor, Nawab they're called, and he ruled this region. And this governor had such a boastful pride about him. One thing he loved doing was asking the people of his court to do what would be almost called impossible tasks, just for his own enjoyment. So one day he called the Maharaja to his throne and he said, you know what I would like for you to do? I've been curious about something. I would like to know the distance all the way around the earth this way and all the way around the earth this way. And while you're at it, I'd like to know how many stars there are in the sky. Well, when the Maharaja heard that, he started to say that it was an impossible task. But the governor stopped him. No, it is not an impossible task. Not if I ask you to do it. And if it is not accomplished, heads will roll. So shaking in his little silver shoes, the Maharaja left the palace, went out the gate, and sat down at the steps right out by the road, and he began wailing, I'm going to die. What am I going to do? I can't do what he's asking me to do. What am I going to do? And right then, his friend Gopal Bhar was coming down the road. He said, Maharaja, my friend, why are you wailing? What is your problem? How can I help? He's, oh, you can't help. You can't help. The governor has just asked me to do something impossible. And when I can't do it, I'm going to lose my life. He said, well, what is it you need, Maharaja? Tell me what you need. He says, oh, the governor, he's asked me to find the distance all the way around the earth this way, all the way around the earth this way, and how many stars there are in the sky. That can't be done. And Gopal Bhar said, oh, don't worry about it. Let me do it for you. You would do that for me, said the Maharaja. And then he thought, if I let Gopal Bhar take the task, and if he doesn't do it, it's his head that will roll. So he graciously tells Gopal Bhar, of course you can do it for me. Thank you. And Gopal Bhar says, well, there's some things I need first. First of all, I want you to make me the official star counter. I want you to make me the official earth measurer. And then I want you to go back in the palace and I want you to tell that governor that that is a brilliant task, but it's so difficult, it's going to take a whole year to do it. And there will be business expenses. And the 1 million rupees. Well, Maharaja wasn't really happy about having to go back in and ask for that, but then he remembered it was going to be Gopal Bhar's head. So he went in and praised the governor for coming up with such a brilliantly difficult task, and that it would take that whole year and 1 million rupees, business expenses, to get it done. The governor was so proud of himself for having developed such a brilliant task, he agreed. And so it was, Gopal Bhar left the city with his pockets full of rupees. And he had a wonderful year. Gopal Bhar went all around the region. He bought elegant clothes. He invested in jewelry. He ate exotic foods. He danced with dancing girls. And he bought himself an elephant. And at the end of that year, he made his way back to the palace where the Maharaja was waiting for him. Maharaja says, "Do you have the information? Are we ready to go see the governor?" He goes, "Oh, look, I only have 4 coins left. It was such a difficult task. I'm going to need another year. Please go ask for 1 more year and 1 million more rupees, business expenses." And so it was. Maharaja approached the governor one more time. He asked for another year, praising him for such a difficult task. It couldn't possibly be done in 1 year. And again, those business expenses. The governor, again, was so proud of himself for having come up with such a brilliant task, he agreed. And so it was, Gopal Bhar left the city, traveled the region, bought more elegant clothes, ate more exotic food, got more baubles and bangles and beads, and he danced with more dancing girls. And because he already had an elephant, he bought himself a tiger. And at the end of that year, the Maharaja was out on those steps looking down the road, and to his delight, here came Gopal Bhar. But with him were 5 sheep and 15 carts filled with matted, tangled, knotted strings and threads and lacy things. And Maharaja said, "Do you have the information? Do you have it?" He says, "Yes, I have it all right here. Take me to see the governor." And so they went into the throne room where the governor approached Gopal Bhar. "Finally, you're here. Finally, you're here. Do you have the figures? Do you have the figures?" Gopal Bhar said, "Figures? Nobody ever mentioned figures. No. Figures were not part of this. I was to bring you information about how many, how much. Nobody ever mentioned figures. But I tell you this, that if you untangle the threads in that first 7 carts and stretch them all the way out, it's the exact distance around the earth. And then if you take the threads out of the 8 carts behind and stretch them all the way out, it's the same distance all the way around the earth that way. Who knew the earth was taller than wider? And then he said, and if you pluck every single hair off the 5 sheep, that is the exact amount as all the stars in the sky. And that is why it took so long, your lord. It took a long time to find the 5 exact sheep. I had to go to the Pyrenees, the Alps, the Himalayas, all the way to the Andes. But here they are. The governor looked at the sheep. How can I do that? Oh, I said that task wasn't impossible, didn't I? So that must be true. This must be the answer. I cannot believe it's all right here before me. And you have answered everything I have asked for. So thank you, Gopal Bhar. And not only that, because you did it in just 2 short years, I am going to reward you with 1 million rupees more, just to use for your own personal delight, not for any business expenses. And that is the story of Gopalpur and the Maharaja and the governor and the 5 sheep and all of that story.
All right, thank you very much, Linda. That was a great turn of events. How many of you have been in a conversation or an argument with somebody and they turn it around on you and you have to do all the work? That was good job. All right, let's send some comments to Linda in the chat as well. All right, as we go forward, I'm going to call on either Tina or Shags. You guys, can you announce what's going on next month in our genre? Do we know which one is that?
No, without looking it up.
Okay. Yeah,
Personal stories, I think, Shags.
personal stories next one. Okay.
It's genre.
Yeah.
So I guess that's my reminder to update the page tonight. The personal stories nomination deadline August 9th. And I think it's actually pretty full from what Ed said. He's got that all filled, but make sure your nominees are in.
Excellent. All right. Thank you very much, Shags. Thank you, everybody, for coming. As promised, I will put something in the chat here to take home. And feel free to come off mute and talk to some of the storytellers if you like. Ask any questions.
I'm going to stop the recording now.
Okay, thanks.